I believe crypto is going to have a great rest of the year, but most people are too bearish and complacent to realize it. In this video, I'll go over my latest portfolio changes and why I think Bitcoin, Zcash, and Hyperliquid are destined for much, much higher prices. This will be the agenda for the video, so let's get right into it. So why do I think Bitcoin has bottomed? I do have a playlist on this, so make sure to check it out if you have the time, but I know it's a lot of videos, so I'll try to summarize it as quickly as possible to respect your time. So I've often talked about this concept of reflexivity on this channel, and the TLDR is people get more bullish on the way up and people get more bearish on the way down. But at some point we have to give, something has to give. So we top and we bottom when sentiment is peak bullish or peak bearish. And we had this negative reflexive loop the past 6 to 8 months where at the top people were bullish, then Bitcoin goes down, people get liquidated, people lose money, people get sad, people capitulate, sentiment hits rock bottom, and after people sell, I mean, first of all, why do you sell, right? People sell because they think they can buy back lower, right? Because they think price will go lower. And they come up with all these reasons on why lower prices are inevitable. But at some point, sellers run out of tokens and it's not going to take that much buying for us to go much higher. And one thing to at least understand, I guess, sentiment is the fear and greed index. And whether or not you believe in this, I think it's not that important, right? The fact is, we hit the lowest fear and greed rating in the history of crypto's existence last month at 66K, which is kind of hard to believe because I don't think it was that bad, but people were more bearish in the last month than they were after the 3AC collapse, the Luna collapse, COVID crash. Like I said, hard to believe, but the thing is, I mean, if you really zoom out here, right? When the fear and greed is this low, it's not a bad time to start buying and look for reasons for why I think why we think we have potentially bottomed, right? So it's not a good time to sell Bitcoin once people are just peak bearish, right? We have to look for reasons to at least be bullish and look for reasons to buy Bitcoin. And for me personally, I've talked about STRC and stretch throughout my channel the past few months, but I thought this was a good reason to just start buying Bitcoin, right? Sellers are out of tokens, right? I mean, we had the Iran war, stocks went down 10%, but Bitcoin couldn't even break like below 65K. And at the same time, Saylor starts just pounding like billions of dollars in the Bitcoin. In March, he bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin, and then in April, he bought almost $3.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. I'll talk more about May later, but I thought that this was a good catalyst to at least start buying Bitcoin around 70K as a good risk reward long. And we're almost at 80K now, plus or minus a couple $1,000, and I think we're going to continue to climb a wall already. And importantly, or interestingly, generally, I mean, Saylor through MSTR, he tends to top last Bitcoin, right? So if you look at like the largest Bitcoin purchase announcements, it usually happens when the MNAV is very high, above 2. But recently he's been able to buy a lot of Bitcoin while the MNAV is very low. And people often complain about how Saylor is the only buyer of Bitcoin and Saylor is a risk to the markets. And I mean, there is elements of truth there. And it does feel like Saylor is the only buyer of Bitcoin sometimes. However, Saylor can't buy Bitcoin unless the market lets him buy Bitcoin, right? Saylor can only buy Bitcoin when there's demand for his products, such as MSTR or STRC. And I think, Saylor's ability to buy kind of reflects the market's, I guess, acceptance that 60K could be low and the future prospects of Bitcoin is getting fairly attractive. And I think this is the way of the market telling us that, let's nibble here, right? I think 60K could be the bottom. So let's test it out, right? Buyers are stepping in. And if this was the bottom, then I think we're going to just, trade much higher because they say markets climb all worry. Why is that? Well, people saw the bottom, they figure out they're wrong, and they have to buy back higher, right? So like markets bottom on bad news, the markets bottom when people are peak bearish, when people least expect it. And I think we are potentially in this positive reflexive loop where, higher prices get people more bullish. And for example, when it comes to like the fundamentals of MSTR, Saylor buying, of course, makes Bitcoin go up on the margin. Bitcoin going up probably expands MSTR's MNAV, and an expanding MNAV enables Saylor to raise more cash, allowing him to buy more Bitcoin. And I think psychologically, the fact that Saylor's in the market almost every single month makes it easier for people to at least hold Bitcoin or buy back into Bitcoin. And I think we're in this healing process. I call this green candle therapy, where higher prices get people that are depressed feeling more optimistic again. And they're going to start buying back in the markets. And before you know it, we're going to be trading much higher. And people will slowly gain confidence back into this asset class. However, I do want to address Saylor potentially selling as a potential reason to be bearish. Of course, I didn't expect this, but actually, I mean, I kind of did expect this. But in the last earnings call, he mentioned that they could sell Bitcoin if it's advantageous to the company. People were freaking out. I didn't mention, last month that this was going to happen, right? Because STRC allows him to buy low, sell high. Because what he can do is lever up Bitcoin at, let's say, 70K, as he has been doing so. And if the trader works out and we go higher, he can sell MSTR above some MNAV, and then he could potentially buy back and retire stretch, or just raise more cash for the cash reserve. I guess what I didn't consider here last month was him selling Bitcoin, but I mean, it's kind of like the same thing, right? The point is, he's not going to just keep borrowing money, right? He could sell and retire his debt obligations if he wants to. And, it's going to be like a trade, right? But what's important was he was buying, is kind of like the point. And obviously, if you look at the earnings call, I mean, first of all, this is kind of like weird, right? It's like this rocket engine thing. There's 3 engines here. There's 8 engines here. Holy shit, 8 is bigger than 3. That's so bullish. And the MSTR maxis are foaming at the mouths. But I mean, honestly, right? I've been talking about stretch and MSTR for a lot. I mean, the past few months, because that's my reason for buying a lot of Bitcoin and levering up and whatnot. But if I really think about it, I mean, this was not the reason I got into crypto, right? I didn't get into crypto because I wanted to follow Saylor buying. But I mean, I guess we kind of have to, or you don't have to, but it was a way for me to potentially make money, right? So I guess I was looking into it. But yeah, he could sell Bitcoin. I mean, this was always going to happen. Whether or not this is bullish or bearish, I don't really know, right? Maybe it's bullish because he'll sell some Bitcoin and then, people will freak out, but it's not going to be a big deal because he's going to buy more Bitcoin. Either way, he's going to do this. It was bound to happen. And potentially maybe the stretch trade has already played out. So I'll first talk about why I took some profits. But first of all, it's not because I'm bearish, right? If you look at my video 2 weeks ago, I was literally levered long, over 100% of my port in Bitcoin, spot and perps. And not only that, I was long Zcash and hype, and this was literally the most risk on I've ever been. So I mentioned that I'll probably take profits in mid-May or mid-June. And I decided to take some profits on the 15th, which was my birthday. And this is important, right? Because, a couple days ago, I ran a half marathon, the Brooklyn half, and I was in a lot of pain. I was lightheaded. I couldn't see straight. And on the way home, on the subway ride home, I realized something. I realized something. I'm getting too old for this shit, right? I'm getting way too old for this. I turned 30 and I'm not 29 anymore, right? I'm not in my 20s anymore, right? Taiki in my 20s, lever long, it's okay. Taiki in my 30s, spot only, right? Until the next time I lever long, going back to spot. So yeah, I'm still super long, obviously, but I did raise some cash. So I'm still long in Bitcoin, still long Zcash. I bought more Zcash, which I'll talk about later, and Hyperliquid. But a little bit of cash just so that I feel a little mature. But I mean, okay, on a more serious note, I did mention that, this is 2 weeks ago. I thought he was going to buy $2 to $3 billion worth of Bitcoin over the next, couple weeks. It should probably send Bitcoin above 80K, and then I'll probably take some profits. So, I'm just telling you what I was going to do. So no one is going to be surprised here. So how did my prediction or thesis come out? So he did buy roughly $2 billion. So he hit my lower range, I suppose. But, he didn't. Yeah, I mean, there was less days of buying, I suppose. So in March, he bought 1.5 billion. In April, he bought 3.4 billion. In May, he bought 2 billion. So is this a trend, right? I don't know. Is it good? The thing is, the reason I lever longed Bitcoin was because I thought stretch was not priced in. And now I think people understand stretch now, right? So I think there's less edge. Or the reason I lever long was because of stretch. It was not priced in. Now it's priced in. So I'll take some. I'll take the leverage off is basically how I'm thinking about things. So it's not that I'm bearish or not bullish or something. But yeah, it's just part of my trade thesis has played out, but I'm still long. I do think being bullish Bitcoin makes sense, right? Because Bitcoin should probably take us out of the bear market and it should probably outperform most altcoins. However, I think what people should consider is when people are most apathetic and have given up on the space, look for new opportunities, mostly in the altcoin complex, and ask yourself, what will people care about next, right? What will be the next narratives to take us out of this bear market into this new bull market? And what is the market telling us right now? And what should we pay attention to? So now I want to pivot and transition the conversation into finding the next 10 to 100x altcoin, right? Obviously, this is a dream. It's a lot easier said than done, but I'll at least try to share my framework to think, or that allowed me to, I guess, like buy a lot of Zcash and hype, because I think those will be like the biggest winners this cycle. So first of all, the late Charlie Munger, he has this inversion principle, and the quick way to summarize it is his quote here: his system at life is to figure out what's really stupid and avoid it. So in other words, if you want to be successful in life, study what unsuccessful people do and then do the opposite, right? So that's kind of how the inversion principle works. So like think backwards, right? Think backwards. And if you were to apply this to the crypto markets right now, if you assume that Bitcoin bottomed at 60K and an altcoin were to go 10, 20, 30, 50x from here, what would be happening now, right? Think backwards. What does the coin look like? How are people talking about it? How are people thinking about it? What are the narratives? And try to work backwards. So one thing we can do first is to talk about what the next 10x won't look like, right? So think about this, right? Yourself, maybe pause the video, make like 5 bullet points or something. And then, note to self, do not buy these types of altcoins because it's just not going to 10x, right? And then you can kind of, process by elimination and whatnot. So VC vaporware, probably not going to pump, right? Why would we, as retail, buy something that VCs got in at like 10th of a valuation? No, screw that. We're not buying those. NFTs, meme coins, the trenchers might disagree, but I think those were last cycle narratives. I don't think people this cycle are going to care about it as much as we did last cycle. Number 3, narratives that are hard to root for. This kind of ties in with VC vaporware and meme coins. Looking back, let's say in the year 2028, do you think we'll look back on this year and be like, wow, like the meme coins had a resurgence, right? The trenchers won again, right? I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's good to root for. I think what's easier to root for are things with more cypherpunk ideals and things that people can actually like be passionate about. And I don't think some of these things are it. Bullet point number 4, chart is down only, showing no signs of life. So, if you think Bitcoin is bottomed and alts were to like pump from here, if that altcoin has not pumped yet, then it's probably never going to pump, right? And then last bullet point, PvP. So, we want to buy stuff that, we can all benefit from, right? I don't want to buy something that someone else is going to like dump on me, of course. So let's talk about what the next 10x will look like, and then we can like work backwards and look for these qualities in an altcoin and then buy those. It's kind of like the opposite, right? Of like the opposite thing, but player versus environment, right? PvE. I hold it, you hold it, it goes up, we all win, right? We're all happy, right? Wag me, right? Wag me energy. Number 2, easy to root for, a good story, right? We all need a good story because this ties in with the reflexivity, right? The positive reflexivity. Number 3, ride some structural tailwinds of some macro trend, right? So I don't think meme coins ride some macro trend, but what will people care more about, like let's say a year from now, 2 years from now, and then like look for those opportunities. Number 4, chart showing some signs of life, like I said earlier. If an altcoin, Bitcoin went from 60K to like 80K or so, right? If an altcoin were to pump from here, it should probably be moving by now, right? I know it's easy to, or I know there's like this allure of like wanting to buy something at the all-time low. So if it pumps, it's like easier to pump, or there's like more room for upside or whatever. But how markets work, especially in crypto, is things that are pumping are more likely to pump, right? And if something were to pump like more from here, it's probably like probabilistically it should already be moving, right? So it's better probably to buy something that's already moving, already up a lot from the bottom, and then like allocate capital to that. So for example, Polkadot, it's literally near all-time lows. I get the point, right? It's like, oh, if it goes to all-time highs, it's like a 40x or whatever. But it's literally Polkadot. Like no one cares about this token, right? So don't buy stuff that looks like this. Whereas Hyperliquid, this thing, it's at $45. It's probably gonna keep going higher, right? It's got good narratives, good tailwinds, and I think we can all kind of understand, yeah, Hyperliquid is a good token, and this is a good looking chart, there's something here, and also ask yourself, like working backwards, if Bitcoin hasn't bottomed yet at 60K, would Hype really be trading like this? Because Hype bottomed at the end of January, and when Bitcoin was going down only from, let's say, October to January, Hype was also going down. But something changed in January, right? That's when buyers stepped in, and we've just been steady Eddie up and to the right. So that's something to at least consider as well. And, people often ask themselves like, oh, like what's the next Solana, right? Because Solana was kind of like the poster child of last cycle, and you can kind of see these PVE characteristics in Solana as well. And obviously all these things are obvious in hindsight, but it's good to think about like these vibes based like metrics, or, you know, I guess like inversion, right? Thinking backwards. Solana was pretty PVE, right? Like FTX died, it went to like $10. So everybody that like held Solana, like $20, $30, $40, like whatever, right? They won except SBF. There were some like good airdrops and whatnot. It was pretty easy to root for, right? The villain died, and then, you know, like the people came back, right? Meme coin, super cycle, whatnot, right? It was like the hub of bull market activity. Also, you know, the Vitalik did a bull post at the bottom, and I think that kind of added to like the good vibes. It's like, yeah, you know, ETH didn't have this ivory tower, it kind of supported Solana, and, you know, we all won together. And I do think that this type of energy is needed in an altcoin that's gonna like pull off multiples, because, you know, like I said, crypto, there's a lot of reflexivity. The vibes do matter. People's perception of the asset does matter, and I don't think the market and the industry will pump something that, you know, people aren't happy about, right? So, you know, let's think about assets that people will be happy to pump, right? What's going to pump, right? Pump creates more pumps. And I've come up with this holy trinity crypto portfolio, and I think I figured it out, right? Of course, my track record is not the best, but I do think this mix of Bitcoin, just, you know, I mean, as like the GigaChat asset, and then Hyperliquid and Zcash is a pretty good mix of something you want to hold and believe in. And I think it's that simple, right? Just hold, ride through the volatility, enjoy it, and then, you know, we're gonna all win together, right? WAGMI vibes. So I'll first talk about why I bought more Zcash and then Hyperliquid, but yeah, Zcash I really like. The more I think about it, the more I look into it, it makes me want to buy more. I've been buying more. You know, I think I showed in my earlier screenshot, right, in my earlier slides, that I first bought around $388. I bought more at like $598. I bought more at $550, and now my average is like $500. So, you know, I've been buying more. So I've been getting really excited for this. I'm really happy. So let's talk about the reflexivity. I think Zcash is very reflexive, and I like that. It doesn't have to be like the largest position in your portfolio, because, you know, if it works, it's gonna like go crazy. So well, let's talk about this, right? Higher price leads to better perception of the product, and better perception leads to like the fundamentals getting better, and that perception increases the price, and then, you know, higher prices improve the fundamentals of the project. And I think Zcash is it. So 2 weeks ago I mentioned this, right? It's very reflexive. You know, when Zcash is like $30, $40, it's like no one cares, right? This thing is a scam. But once it goes up, it's like, wow, privacy is a human right. You know, everyone needs Zcash. Everyone needs privacy. This is the most important thing ever, right? Where, you know, literally price goes up, and then people are like, wow, like this is the most egalitarian thing I've ever seen, right? I love this thing, right? And I think we're kind of seeing that now. And yeah, I think what got me over the edge, I mean, first of all, this thing pumped in October last year. And I was mostly uninterested because I was like bearish the markets, and I was like shorting ETH and stuff. So I was kind of like seeing how it would react after the bear market. And I mean, this thing went down like 75%, but like it just started ripping recently, right? And I mean, first of all, this is a monthly chart, right? So there's 10 years of price action here, almost 10 years of price action here. And I don't think you want to fade like a 10-year breakout. And I do like the narrative. So narrative is privacy, right? Privacy coin, privacy, like a private store of value, a quantum hedge. And I came up with this like a Sailor hedge. I'll talk more about this later. And there's no like cash flow, right? So there's no valuation floor or ceiling. So if this thing hits like 3K, no one's gonna be surprised. If this thing hits $200, no one's gonna be that surprised either, right? So, you know, it's really risky. It's a really high risk, high reward type of thing. And people are saying this should be like 10% or 5% of the market cap of Bitcoin. So the higher Bitcoin goes, you know, that also raises the ceiling, and it could be like a Bitcoin beta in that sense. And there's been a lot happening over the past year or so. Most notably in January, the SEC dropped its case against Zcash. The American VCs are lobbying for Zcash, and I think, you know, Zcash is a better privacy coin than Monero, because it's probably going to be like the most compliant privacy coin, where if you use Monero, you're probably a criminal. If you use Zcash, you're not going to go to jail type of thing. And let's talk about the inversion theory, right? If Zcash were to 10x from here, what would need to be happening now, right? Like inversion theory. First of all, the supply of Zcash in the shielded pool is going up and to the right, which is really good, right? Because the more Zcash in the shielded pool improves Zcash as a product. Because let's say you have $1 million that you want to like shield, right? If there's 0 Zcash in the shielded pool, you can't use it, right? Because if you're like 100% of the TVL, then there's no privacy there. And how it kind of works is, you can buy Zcash, you can put it in the shielded pool, you can just let it chill there. And if you do want to move the money around in the future, you can just pull your Zcash out of the shielded pool, but your Zcash won't be tracked to like whatever your previous transaction is. So it's kind of like a mixer, and it's a way to store your capital there. And that's kind of how it works. And of course, the higher Zcash goes in price, the more supplies in the shielded pool, it can support more dollars to be put in here into the future. So, from that perspective, there is fundamentals, and it's improving in that sense. And one of the questions I was thinking is, like, why did it take so long, right? Like, why is it important now? And there are like macro factors that tie into this, but also maybe Zcash needed 10 years of these proof of work emissions and this accumulation and distribution phase before it could really work as a private store value, as like a Bitcoin hedge. And like I said, I just don't think I want to hedge, or I want to fade a 10-year breakout where, if you really think about it, people like myself, other influencers or other funds or whatever, right? They're getting excited, right? They're talking about it. And maybe that's like a top signal. Maybe, but people are so apathetic right now. So if people are still getting, if people are getting excited about something now, then there's probably more signal there than noise. Of course, if Bitcoin's like at 6 figures and then people are talking about meme coins or something, right? Then maybe that's more top signal vibes. But I think there's more signal now than there's ever been, right? You want to pay attention when people are tapped out. And I think this is the opportunity. And if I'm wrong, I lose a lot of money. If I'm right, we make money. Cool. So there's that. And like I said in my last video, Zcash, same supply schedule as Bitcoin, right? 4-year halving cycle. And the last halving was November 2024. And if you think about the 4-year cycle, right? The Bitcoin, the 4-year cycle, like maxis and whatnot, they say, hey, like the raging bull market happens like a year after the halving, right? We're a year and a half into the halving, so maybe, like I said, maybe Zcash needed all this supply churning to really work. And the fundamentals are improving, right? Development, regulatory front, and the shielded pool, right? Zcash and the shielded pool and whatnot. And also, this is also a signal, I think, like whatever you think of like the Bankless guys or like the Solana people, right? The thing is, Zcash is bringing these communities together. Like think about 2 years ago. Like, the ETH people, the Solana people, they couldn't really agree on something, right? It's like, oh, meme coins are good, meme coins are bad type of thing. But like Zcash, as this cypherpunk concept, as an asset, is bringing these people together, right? To bull post and like talk about Zcash and privacy together. And I think that's beautiful, right? Especially now, like in the past year or so, right? We had all this grift, we had all these reasons to think that crypto is a scam. So I think, what will take us out has to be something that makes us feel good about the space. And I think Zcash does make us feel good about the space because, it's like this team that's been working on this for 10 years. It's these diamond hands community that's stuck through it. And, if they're making money, I don't think anyone can complain, right? Even if you don't like Zcash or don't like get it, right? It's like if Zcash pumps and like the 5-year holders, like diamond hands, they make money, like I'm sure you'll be happy for those people, right? Whereas for like some like random VC paper where it's like, yeah, like screw the VCs type of thing. So I think, you're kind of seeing like this, what I said, green candle therapy, right? Where the soul, right? The crypto soul is healing, right? The next cycle, hopefully there's less grift and more like feels good vibe coins. And I think Zcash, I think there's something there, right? I think every cycle has to be led by something that makes us feel excited about the space. And I think Zcash could be one of it. And I'll talk more about Hyperliquid too, but it's like the same thing. And of course, I'm not sure how important this is, but I've talked about Stretch a lot, right? And I've been cheerleading Stretch because I own Bitcoin and I want Bitcoin to go up, obviously. And I'm not really a Sailor hater, and I don't think he'll blow up because I don't believe in those things. But maybe he does make Bitcoin harder to root for, like the Bitcoin centralization, right, with Sailor, which, Tom Lee owns 4% of ETH supply, Sailor owns 4% of Bitcoin supply. So it's like the same thing, but Sailor is so loud, and if Bitcoin succeeds, then Sailor is going to be like the richest man on earth. And I'll be happy if that happens, but, I feel like Bitcoin is harder to root for now than it was like 5 years ago. And if I feel it, then chances are other people feel it. I'm sure you feel it. And I don't know, does that matter? Maybe not, right? I think the entire industry needs Bitcoin to succeed. It's something to consider though, right? Like I said, what will people care about in the future? And if people care about it now, then maybe people will care more about it in the future. And the narrative is, hey, Bitcoin is insurance against fiat. Zcash is insurance against Bitcoin, right? Sailor risk, quantum risk, privacy risk, all that stuff. Even Ray Dalio is like, hey, I don't like Bitcoin because it's not private. Maybe it doesn't matter, right? And he's a boomer. Who cares? But hey, these are things that people care about, are talking about. So hey, if Zcash goes up because of privacy, of quantum, whatever, no one's gonna be surprised, right? It's like, oh, of course, right? Maybe Zcash should be 3% of the market cap of Bitcoin or whatever. And like I said, if that's the case, if Bitcoin goes up, Zcash will go up as well. Like I said, I also don't know if this matters. And I don't think anyone is sympathetic to like billionaires complaining about taxes. But the California wealth tax proposal, there's like some tax stuff happening in Australia too that people are unhappy about, but like a one-time 5% tax on wealth. And like I said, Zcash, it works if there's a lot of supply in the shielded pool, and if it helps, it works even better if the price goes up, right? Because it can support more dollars in the shielded pool. So maybe, right, this isn't a big deal in the future, but this could be like a macro tailwind of maybe these governments are going to impose these types of things in the future, and like higher net worth individuals in the future are going to look to Zcash as a potential solution to at least have private money. So something to at least consider, right? And like I said, tailwinds, narratives. Will people care more about privacy, quantum, Sailor in the future? Will governments more likely to become more communist/socialist policies in the future? I think Zcash benefits from all these narratives, and it is really hard to value. And I think Taiki 4 years ago could not have bought Zcash because I was a mid-curve. I'm still a mid-curve, but I'm trying to escape the mid-curve. I'm trying to believe, right? I'm trying to embrace the reflexivity, the left curve, and it's at least my attempt. So that's kind of where my head is at. And like I said, right, going back to the soul, the crypto soul, right, the cypherpunk roads. I don't think the next bull market will be led by things like meme coins or VC paper world, Liberty Fi. I think what's more likely, it doesn't have to be Zcash, right? But I think the industry will self-correct from the grift super cycle, right? From XRP, right? World Liberty Finance, Trump meme coin, back to the old crypto ethos that people will be happy about. And if this doesn't happen, then maybe the industry dies off, right? But I think if we're going to see higher prices, I think something like this has to happen. It doesn't have to be Zcash, obviously, right? It can be like Hyperliquid or like Bitcoin or some other asset. But I think, we're starting to see the green candle therapy just form in front of our eyes. But it's hard to appreciate it when you're living in it, right? I'm sure a year from now, it'll be obvious in hindsight, but like it gets me excited, right? And I don't get excited that easily. Maybe I do, but it's been a while since a coin has excited me this much. Who knows? Maybe me buying more Zcash is kind of how Isaac Newton was like. I invest a little bit, he sells, Newton's friends gets rich, Newton re-enters with a lot, and then he exits broke. Maybe this is what ends up happening. So DYOR. But I think, like I said, inversion theory. I think all the things that you want to be happening for an altcoin, all the characteristics that I want to see in an altcoin, I see in Zcash. And it's not my largest position, but I own a bunch. I bought more. Hyperliquid, maybe this is more obvious for the mid-curves like you and I. But I think I self-selected my audience to people that understand Hyperliquid because my videos are so damn long. So the tourists probably don't click on my videos. So chances are you understand Hyperliquid. But obviously, I think Hype is the leader of perps. I think most long tail alts are going to go to zero, and most of the volume is going to go to like RWAs, like gold, oil, stocks, and whatnot. And obviously, Hyperliquid is doing well on that front. HIP3 daily OI going up into the right. So this is like RWAs, right? Stocks, gold, etc. Most revenue goes back into Magnet token, and going back to this idea again. If Hype were to go to like $100 plus, what would need to be happening now? There's price discovery on oil happening on Hyperliquid during the war. That was good to see. The recent IPO markets, right? People are literally, the boomers, right? They're accessing Hyperliquid from, a restricted jurisdiction, right? You can see with the red bar here, to monitor like pre-market pricing for these IPOs. And there's price discovery happening on these fronts, which hasn't really happened before. And Like, this is what you want to see, right? And of course, Hyperliquid is higher in price, but that's precisely what I want to see, me personally. You know, Coinbase, you know, cementing Hyperliquid, you know, de-risking it a little bit. These are things you want to see, you know? So our price is higher. Does it feel bad buying higher? Yeah. I mean, a few months ago, I wanted to buy Hyperliquid at like $15, but I had to top last at like $37. But that's what happens, right? Markets climb all the way. People want lower prices. They don't get it. They top last. That's what takes us higher. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing now. And of course, right, all the value goes to the token, no VCs, generous airdrop, humble founder, easy to root for. Perps has structural tailwinds coming years. Own it, don't trade it. It's like my mindset. So I think, you know, Hyperliquid, Zcash has these characteristics for like this player versus environment coin that the industry can rally around and act as like a shelling point for something to believe in. And I think that's necessary, especially at these times when the sentiment is just so bad right now. And I do think that these subjective, I guess, ideas matter, especially when people are just so depressed, because otherwise, how can we ever recover? So my portfolio is like this. So yeah, no more leverage, just spot. I'm a boomer, I'm 30, right? New decade. I bought more Zcash, top lasted. I brought my average from like 388 to 500, but whatever, right? I got to my ideal position size, so I'll take that. And then some hype. And then rest cash, farming variational as a perp dex, and then on-chain stretch. So pretty simple. I think, you know, pretty simple portfolio, right? The holy trinity, Bitcoin, Zcash, hype. Left curve, mid curve, right curve. And on-chain stretch, I'll quickly talk about this. I mean, I'm really bullish stretch, like the on-chain version of it, right? Especially because Saylor, he said he's willing to sell Bitcoin to defend stretch, which should increase the TAM, right? The total addressable market of stretch on-chain even more. So I think, you know, on-chain stretch, whether it's a Saturn or Apex, has some upside. I'm in Saturn, the curve pool, so DYOR, it's not risk-free. You know, you're an adult, you can do the research, so feel free to check that out. And of course, if you like more content, make sure to check out my premium Discord. I post 3 videos every single week and, you know, frequent updates. If you want to, right? Maybe your money is better off buying Zcash, and I totally understand. You know, let's make money together, hopefully, right? So, final thoughts. My voice is getting raspy because I've been talking for so long, but you know, I really do think it's a symbol, right? Bitcoin, Zcash hype. I mean, there's obviously going to be like other coins that's going to pump, right? But in terms of coins that, you know, people are, you know, rallying around, coins you can size into. I think the coins with like decent supply distribution, I think these coins are pretty good, you know? And I think, you know, it's one of those things where you just size according to your risk tolerance and just enjoy the ride, right? I honestly believe we have amazing opportunities in the future, or right now, because there's going to be, you know, green candles in the future, but it's hard to see it, right? It's hard to appreciate the opportunities right now because people aren't feeling great. You know, it was hard to appreciate the opportunity that, you know, FTX gave us when it rugged, right? Giving $16,000 Bitcoin because it felt terrible. But those opportunities, you can only appreciate it in hindsight. When you're living in it, it's hard to appreciate. But these opportunities are here, right? I think, like, honestly, I mean, I could be wrong, honestly, right? I mean, I'm known for being wrong, right? That's kind of my MO. But my mindset is like, Bitcoin hype Zcash, enjoy life, enjoy the ride, you know? Like, you get paid to build conviction while others are tapped out, right? People are like, oh, like Bitcoin go to 30K, right? Hype to $10, right? Zcash, 0. So you know what? Maybe, right? And if they're right, I'll lose money. But you know what? Sometimes you gotta have the stones to just click the green button, right? And believe in something, right? Green candle therapy, right? That's what I'm betting on here. And Munger, right? I love this guy, right? Big money is not in the buying or selling, but in the waiting. I bought, I'm waiting, I'm bull posting my bags. I believe in the green candle therapy. I bring the good vibes. I bull post the top. I bull post the bottom. I bull post the top. Always. I don't know. I feel like we're, you know, like I feel like it's fun again, right? Like, crypto's fun again. Like, we're going up, right? And you know, I love dunking on the bears, right? I was a bear like 6 months ago, but now I'm dunking on the bears. I'm like, yeah, haha, right? Bears sound smart, but bulls make money. And then I post these memes on Twitter, and people are like, screw this guy. But you know what? Like, I don't care, right? I'm a mid curve. I don't care. And like I said, without the pain, there's no gain, right? Without the pain, there's no gain. And I think, this, like the half marathon, like the first 7 miles, or my target time was like 2 hours, or sub 2 hour marathon, half marathon. And, that was like a 9-minute pace, right? So first 7 miles, I'm like running a 9-minute pace, feeling good, right? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so fit. And then like mile 8, I started dying, right? I was like, oh my God, it's so hot. Oh my God, my legs hurt. And then I got nowhere near 2 hours, right? I got like 2 hours and 10 minutes, which is like a 9-minute and 40 second pace or something. And I was like, mile 10, I was in so much pain. I thought about giving up, right? I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. I'm so weak. But guess what? Pain is temporary. Finishing is forever, right? And I finished. I feel good about myself, even though I'm old. And I love my bags, right? I love my bags. You don't have to agree with my bags, but I hope you love your bags, right? We all love our bags. Our bags are going to go up. We're all going to win. Wag me energy, green candle therapy. I believe, right? Do you believe? Because I believe. I believe. That's what matters. Let's hope we don't lose money, but we believe. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys another time. Bye-bye.